Calling all Superman cosplayers. Hi everyone, my name's TJ, and I'm a fan of the All-Star Superfan podcast, and since I don't have a Signal watch, I'm just going to use social media. Let's all use the upcoming Superman movie opening, July 11th, 12th, and 13th, to raise funds for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. You can contact your local movie theater and let them know you'd like to volunteer to be in their lobby as the Man of Steel on opening weekend. You can volunteer as much as you're able. Every hour you give can make a real difference to someone in need. The Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is 100% on board and is going to be supplying us with an official digital link that people can use to donate directly to the foundation, so you don't need to worry about handling any money. You can invite your friends and fellow cosplayers to join you as Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor, and other DC characters. And you are not alone. Alan posted a link to the Facebook event, Superman 25, in the All-Star Superfan Podcast Facebook group. The event is there so we can all work together and help each other to achieve this once-in-a-lifetime feat. We might not be able to bend steel in our bare hands or change the course of mighty rivers, but together we can have Superman's greatest ability, to give others hope and a better tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
We talk Superman, and we know what's happening. We talk Superman, and we cover everything.
Hey Superfans, and welcome back to All-Star Superfan Podcast, the podcast that celebrates the legacy of Superman across all media. I'm Alan Burke, and today Rob and I have a special episode as we are joined by a man who played a pivotal role in bringing Christopher Reeve Superman to the big screen, Mr. ILYA SALKIND. As one of the key producers behind the Superman film franchise, ILYA was instrumental in making Superman the movie a reality. From securing the talents of Richard Donner, John Williams, and a host of Hollywood legends, he helped shape the Superman mythology for generations of fans to come. Today, we're going to talk about the highs and the challenges of making the Superman movies we all grew up loving, as well as ILYA's wider career in film and television. It's a conversation you won't want to miss. So sit back, relax, and join us as we chat with the man who helped Superman take flight, ILYA SALKIND.
So, Mr. Salkind, I'm Rob, and this is my co-host Alan. We like to start all of our guest interviews by asking what your first experience with Superman was. So before the films or anything like that, what was your first experience with Superman?
Reading the comic book. I read it when I was about, I'd say about 10 or 11. And that's when it started. That's when the idea came in my head.
So you knew from those early beginnings, you knew straight away that this is something you wanted to be a part of?
No, not really. I just read it, liked it, and somehow when I had lunch with my father in Paris, and we had done the Three and Four Musketeers, which was they were very big hits, and so we were discussing what's the next film, and I said, why don't we do Superman? And he said, what's Superman? And I explained, and he didn't know, but he went to talk to his buyers. The buyers liked it, and that's when it started. And then it took us about 3 months to get the rights from NPP. They were called NPP then. Now they're called DC Comics.
And what was the process like in acquiring the rights? Was that a difficult process? Did they take a lot of convincing to sell the rights?
Yes, it was very difficult. They were very difficult. They wanted all kind of, how can I say, questions, how to cast the part, the age. I mean, everything was very difficult. It took, as I said, it took a month to do it.
One of the things I've often wondered, and it's something we ask a lot of guests, is if we ever have Superman actors on the show, we ask them what it was like wearing the suit for the first time and how that felt. But I was just wondering, in terms of the score itself, John Williams wrote one of the arguably greatest film scores in the history of cinema, one of the most widely known themes in the history of cinema. What was it like hearing that for the first time? Do you have any memories to that?
Well, I mean, look, John Williams is a fantastic guy, and we're good friends. And I remember we had a lunch in Pinewood, London, and I said, John, who do you think is the greatest musician of all time? And he said, Beethoven. And I said, why? And he said, because he brought romance. And I'll always remember that. But he's a wonderful guy. Wonderful.
And I suppose, springing on from that, Mr. Salkind, then bringing this to the big screen at the time, you were making a film, a scale of which had never been seen before for these types of comic book heroes. Was there any kind of influences you drew from other movies of the time, like other big blockbuster movies? Like, I can't help but think that you must have taken a lot of inspiration from the James Bond series, because I know Guy Hamilton was supposed to direct at one point, and then obviously Tom Mankiewicz was involved.
Yeah. Guy Hamilton. I hired him because of Goldfinger, which I thought was a very good Bond. And also, he had done a film called The Battle of Britain, which was a big film, good film. And those were the two reasons really to hire him. And then sadly enough, he couldn't go to England because he was a tax exile, and he had to leave every. I think he could stay a month a year.
Yeah.
So it was impossible to shoot the film there. And we started in Rome, in Cinecittà, and with Guy. And we had already Marlon Brando, and when we got Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman because of Guy. That
Oh, I see.
yeah,
Okay.
that was the.
And do you ever wonder what that film might have turned out like had Guy Hamilton stayed on it?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, he's a good director. He was a good director, but I don't know if he would have been as good as Donner. Donner was a fantastic director. I mean, no question. Did a very good movie.
On the subject of Donner, then I suppose that takes us on to the first two movies. Which everyone will agree are the high watermark of the Superman series. Much has been made of what happened during the production of the first two movies. Donner leaving, Richard Lester coming in, scenes being reshot. Reflecting on it after all these years, what's your thoughts on the whole thing with Donner?
Well, I mean, Donner and I had a lot of fights all the time, but he did a very good movie. What happened is that there was an article in Army Archer, who was a famous variety columnist, saying, I'll do Superman 2, but it will be on my terms and my way." I said,
Okay.
"Father, we can't work with this guy. It's impossible." So we fired him and we hired Richard Lester.
Do you regret that decision to have fired him after one, or are you happy looking back that you made the right decision at the time?
I think I made the right decision because we would have had a lot of problems working together, real problems.
Yeah.
And Lester,
That's fair enough.
a very, very, very efficient and very collaborative director. We got along very well. I mean, I still consider my best film ever made is The Four Musketeers, which I consider even better than the Superman picture.
Oh wow. Okay.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Yes.
I was actually I was only reading up on the Three and the Four Musketeers there. I know my mum was a big fan of those growing up. By the way, myself and Alan are champions of the theatrical version of Superman 2. That's our favourite version.
By far.
We are quite partial to a lot of the material with Brando that we eventually saw in 2006. Are there any of those scenes that you think are better, or is there anything that you wish you could take from Donner's version to make the ultimate version of Superman 2, if that makes any sense?
Well, I would say that frankly, Brando would have been very good, but Brando had finished. If you want, Joel had finished his part. I mean, and it was a very good idea, which I had actually, to have his mother.
Yeah, obviously Richard Lester then went on to direct Alan's favorite Superman film, Superman 3.
My favorite Superman film, that's right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Mr. Salkind, I know that you originally prepared a very different treatment for Superman 3 that involved Brainiac and Supergirl and Mr. Mix's Pidlick. And the film obviously took a very different, it changed quite a bit then into the film we eventually got. What happened there exactly? You were taking a lot of comic book elements there that ended up not appearing on the film. Do you remember what happened there? Or
Yes, yes, it was a very good. I consider it a very good treatment, and sadly enough, Warner's didn't like it, and we changed, and then the idea of getting Richard Pryor came on, and that was because he was on the Johnny Carson show, and he said, "Oh my God, I love Superman. I'd like to be in a Superman movie." And that was the idea, and I think the idea was wrong. Now I
Uh,
think it's wrong.
I was actually just going to ask you that. I was just about to ask you, how do you feel looking back on the decision to cast Richard Pryor? So do you think that he was miscast in the role, or do you think it was just the way that the role itself was written? Maybe if he had played it straighter or something like that, or if it had been written straighter, maybe.
I don't know if he could have played it straight because he was a fantastic comic, uh,
Yeah.
very nice by the way. And I don't know if it would have worked. Actually, the actor I wanted for that part was Frank Langella or Langella.
oh
Oh,
wow,
Yes, yes, that was.
well, for the Richard Pryor part, is it?
Yes, for the Richard Pryor part. And that didn't turn out to work because he was or busy. I think he was busy actually.
And do you think, obviously, the tone of Superman 3 was quite different to 1 and 2. Do you think if Richard Donner had stayed on, that the tone of the movies, of the sequels, would have been more consistent with each other? Do you think 3 would have been more tonally like 1 and 2? Or do you think it's still, would you have still pushed towards a comedy movie?
No, I think with Donner we had fights all the time, but we agreed. After the fights, we usually agreed on the points. And so I think if he would have not insulted us, uh, I think we would have continued with him. No question. No question.
I think it's fair to
very good.
say, as Rob mentioned earlier on, I am a huge fan of Superman 3 because it's the Superman movie that I grew up with in the late 80s and early 90s, renting it on VHS. I don't know if you can see it, but I have the poster in the background here on the wall. But I was just wondering, it's no secret that it wasn't as well received as Superman the movie and Superman 2. I'm just wondering, looking back on it, how do you feel about the film itself all these years later?
Look, I mean, the film made $70 million, which is a lot of money. Now, of course, it didn't make the money that Superman 1 and 2 did before, but it was a big success. Actually, when we had the premiere, we had President Reagan, and
Oh wow.
yes, yes, in Washington. And it was a very big, Warner's was very excited about it. And as I say, $70 million is a very, very, very good hit. Now, it's
Yep.
not round
Absolutely.
one and two, but it's very good. I mean, I'm happy with the movie. I think the only difference I might have preferred if we would have done my script, which was, I think, more interesting because it had Brainiac, and that would have been.
I, I I just have one small question, and it's not a very important question, but it's something I've always wondered, and I probably won't get this opportunity again. And if you don't know the answer, just that's perfectly understandable. But in Superman 3, in the high school scene, you use a giant picture of Christopher Reeve as a teenager on the wall, and I'm just wondering, was there any reason why a photo of Jeff East from the first movie wasn't used? I've always wondered that. Was that just a business thing, or was that Chris Reeve wanting to get his picture on the wall?
Oh no, that's a very good point. That was definitely my calling to have Chris Reeve's picture and not Jeffy's. But
Ah, okay.
uh, yes, because we were back to Superman in his 30s, and it made sense. It made sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, perfect.
To be honest, Ilya, I think you made the right decision there. I think people might not remember Jeff East that late into the game in the series. I wanted to ask you, Ilya, the special effects in all three of your Superman movies are second to none. And by Superman 3, there's some incredible sequences, action sequences. I'm thinking about the chemical plant rescue, the junkyard fight, and then in the second movie you have that incredible fight with the Phantom Zone gang, and then in the first movie you obviously have that amazing helicopter rescue and all the stuff in the San Andreas Fault. Is there one kind of effects or action sequence, or indeed in Supergirl, is there anything across the movies that stands out as a highlight for you in terms of a big set piece that you're very proud of?
Look, I must say, I think a lot of the times that we had those scenes, they were very good, and it's hard to compare them really. I think they're
Mm.
all on the same level of quality. I mean, we had a fantastic set of stunt coordinators and flying unit, all that. Absolutely fantastic. All English, all English.
Obviously, as listeners would know, you were involved in the making of the Supergirl movie back in 1984 with Helen Slater. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that picture all these years later. Obviously, it wasn't a tremendous success in theaters, but I was just wondering how you feel about it now.
You know, it's a very strange picture because it opened number one and then it fell down very quickly. Now, I saw the film again, and frankly, it has a lot of problems. It's not as Superman
Mm.
1, 2, or 3. There's no question. She's fantastic, Ellen.
Yeah.
She's
Helen, yeah.
very good.
How far into negotiations did you get with Christopher in terms, because we've heard before and we've read before that there was talk of Christopher appearing in a cameo in the film. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just wondering, was there much negotiation with Chris? Did that get very far?
There was, and he was supposed to, and then he turned it down. He said no, and it was a pity because it would have helped the movie a lot if there would have been a scene with Superman, Christopher Reeve. No question.
And do you have
Do you
any idea?
remember, did that have much of an impact on the production at the time? Was there rewrites as a result of that?
Yes, there were rewrites to get rid of what was written with him before, and we had to rewrite. I repeat, Ellen is fantastic, and I'm actually
Yeah, she is.
considering now I'm preparing two movies, and I'm considering her to I'm gonna try to get her into one of the movies.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about those movies?
Yes, one is about Stanley Kubrick and the other guy who wrote
Oh,
2001.
very
Yeah, it's
good.
very interesting. It's the making of the writing of 2001. So that's a very good project.
Hmm.
Looking back at the series as a whole, I'm just wondering: is there anything looking back on it that you would do differently if you could redo those films? Is there anything that you would change, or be it directors or actors or just the way the sequels turned out? Is there anything that you would like to go back and change if you had the opportunity?
I don't know. Look, the movies did very well. Uh,
Hmm.
now Dick Donner, if he hadn't asked for absurd things, I definitely would have taken him to do Superman 2 and 3. But it became impossible and didn't work out. We made peace at the end before he passed away. We made peace and
Good.
we saw each other many times. But he was a very good director. Now Les was a very good director too, and Les was alive, by the way,
Yeah.
94.
I know, Rob, we can't let Mr. Salkind go without you asking a question about your other favourite movie involving a flying man, and that's Santa Claus, the movie.
Yes, a very good segue, Alan. And you mentioned Christopher Columbus. We've talked a lot about Superman and obviously Supergirl. I feel like there's a bit of a theme across a lot of your films, in that they're kind of these big icons of Americana. You might correct me if I'm wrong on that, but where did the idea for Santa Claus come from? Was it that idea of like, what can we do next, or where did it kind of
Oh,
come
that's
from?
a very good question. No, I had written a treatment about Santa Claus without any reason whatsoever. And then after Supergirl, we started to discuss with my father what to do next, and I said, let's do Santa Claus. And so we did it, and I consider the film pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Apparently, it is shown every year. In
It's hugely popular in the United Kingdom, and even here in Ireland, as I was growing up in the 80s, it was the Santa Claus movie of my generation. So it was the movie that I grew up with that featured Santa Claus. So I'd like to thank you for that, because it was a very magical film growing up.
Yeah, no, it's a magical film, and Jeannot, sadly enough, passed away recently.
That's
Yes.
right. Yes, that's
Wonderful
right.
guy. He was a very nice man. On both films, he was absolutely fantastic. That's why I took him again, actually. Was a simple reason. He was a very, very easy man to work with.
I have to ask this. It's something I noticed watching the film, and I have to ask this while we have you. Was Dudley Moore's character in that film in any way inspired by Mr. Mxyzptlk from Superman? Because there's a scene where he's talking to John Lithgow and he's teleporting around the room, and it made me think ILYA SALKInd wrote a treatment for Superman 3 with Mr. Mxyzptlk in it. Is it possible that he took some of the ideas for that and put them into the Santa Claus movie? Am I way off the mark there, or does that ring any bells for you?
I think it is true. I must have thought to put it in, yes.
Way! Amazing, amazing. Now, I want to go on to my next favourite topic where you're concerned, Mr. Salkind, is the Superboy show. We are big fans of that show. I discovered it in my teens, and I've been kind of flying the flag for it ever since. And the number one thing I always tell people is how good the flying is. It's literally as good as it is in the Superman movies. Would you just take a look back on that whole experience of bringing this onto not only a TV show, but like a low budget TV show? It must have been a completely new experience to anything you'd done prior to that, was it?
Well, it was 100% because I had never done television, so that was the first time. And I recall very clearly my father, because in the contract with DC Comics, NPP then, it was called NPP, it had to be produced by Alexander or ILYA Salkind. So he didn't produce physically, so he was stuck. So he made me an offer and paid me a lot of money, and I did it for a very good reason. And it turned out to be a good show, no question. It's a good show. I mean, 100 episodes.
And what made you decide to shoot it in Florida?
Well, that's a very good question. We were based in Florida with my third ex-wife, Jane Chaplin. So it made sense to continue in Florida.
I read that you were originally going to shoot it in Czechoslovakia. Is that right?
There was a question, yes, there was a question, but then we made very good deals in Florida, and the crew was very good. I mean, they were all the guys from Superman who came back to for the flying. So it was a very good unit, no question.
Absolutely.
We've had both John Hames Newton and Gerard Christopher on the podcast previously, on the show previously, and they're friends of the podcast, and we like them both very much in both of their portrayals. John Newton in season 1 and Gerard Christopher in season 2, 3, and 4. But I was just wondering, from your own point of view, Mr. Salkind, what was the reason that you recall that John Newton was replaced after season 1?
And in the contract with the NPP, you couldn't have anything with legal ramifications. So that was the main reason, really. If not, we met again later, and we're good friends, no question. But that was the reason, really, that I replaced him with Jared Christopher. And not only did I replace him with Jared Christopher, I changed Lex Luthor and
That's right.
the other guy, T.G. White, by
Hmm.
what's the name of the actor?
So TJ White was played by Jim Calvert, and then I think you replaced him with Elan Mitchell Smith.
Yes, exactly, Alan Mitchell Smith, who was a better actor, frankly. So that was the reason. But
Mm.
no, I did something incredible. I replaced 3 out of 4.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just the only reason I asked was because we had John Newton on before, and he disputed the fact that he had a DUI. He said it was a different kind of a traffic violation, but I just said I'd ask yourself just to clarify it, because just for the
It's
audience.
very long ago, and might
Yeah,
remember better, and perhaps he didn't have a DUI. But I mean, I
Mm.
know that I replaced him for some reason, and it wasn't his acting because his acting was good. Actually, I'm rewatching the first
Yeah.
season now on DVD, and he was very good. No question. No. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, no question. Yeah, that,
Jared was great. I mean, I saw Jared recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, and we're very good friends. I mean, he's very nice. Again, they're both very nice.
One of the most interesting things about Superboy, Mr. Salkind, then is it starts in Schuster University in the first 2 seasons, and then in season 3, it takes quite a different jump altogether. It changes completely to a completely different setting. It seems like you took a lot of inspiration from the Batman movie at that stage. It becomes a much darker show. There's a lot of horror elements, a lot of noir elements. Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you remember the kind of shift in tone it took?
Yes, yes, it was. No, it was deliberate. I mean, definitely to. I think you're right to follow a bit the Batman syndrome. Yes.
And there has been a lot of kind of myths out in the ether there that the plan was that you were going to spin this off. You're going to spin the show off into Superman kind of TV movies or something where Superboy would become Superman. Is there any truth to that, or is that just internet
Oh
stuff?
no,
Or
no, no. There was a thought before they didn't renew the after the fourth season. There was a Before that
mm,
there was a thought of doing a movie. Absolutely. That's a fact. That's a fact.
very good. And was this in any way related to Superman Reborn, or is that a different project entirely?
No, it was before. It was after Superman Reborn.
Oh wow, okay, wow. So you plan to maybe turn Gerard Christopher into Superman?
Possibility. So it
Hmm.
could have been. It could have been Jared Christopher. No question.
yeah. So just in terms of Superman Reborn, a lot of fans were very excited over the last few months to see the live reading of the first draft of Superman Reborn. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how that came about.
That came about because there was a very nice guy. I can't remember his name. Who contacted me and said we'd love to do a reading of Superman Reborn, and will you come over, etc., etc. And so I said, very good idea, and they did it, and Mark Jones and I were there. There was a question and answer, and it was very positive. It was a very good reading with very good actors, very good actors.
And
We really enjoyed it. I have to say it was really strong, and I'm a big fan not only of that original draft but also the third draft that's been online for a couple of years now. I read that years ago, and I was a big fan of that. We did notice it was a lot more adult in a lot of places, and that there was some cursing and swear words and some graphic sex scenes and things that maybe weren't in the older movies. Was that was that an avenue you were looking to go down? You were trying to make it a bit darker, a bit edgier.
Definitely, yes. We were trying to make it a little bit edgier, but it was still, PG-13. I mean, it would have been
Okay,
R, no question.
okay.
And with the time that would have passed between, if Superman Reborn had gone into production, the time that had passed between, say, Superman 3, Superman 4, and Superman Reborn, do you think you would have had to have recast a lot of the roles, or do you think you would have gone back to the well and hired some of those original actors to return?
Look, I had a lunch with Christopher Reeve. And still,
Mm,
in age-wise, he could have done it, and he was do it. I
yeah.
mean, no question about it. He was ready to do it. No, it's the fact is that Warner's just didn't
Mm.
click, and they didn't click.
And what about say Margot Kidder? Was she considered to be brought back as Lois?
Uh, yes, she was still young enough to do it. She could
Mm.
have done it. But I think the reason is that Warner's wanted to do what did they do after the
The Lois
yeah,
and Clark, or was it the Tim Burton one?
no, the Lois and Clark. They wanted to do Lois and Clark, and so
Mm.
they
Yeah.
sabotaged it. No question about it. No question about it.
And it's unfortunate in a way because we were talking about this recently, that a lot of the elements that you introduced in that script made it into other Superman scripts throughout the 90s. I don't know if you're aware of this, but like the Tim Burton Kevin Smith script had Brainiac in it. It had Superman dying, it had him coming back to life. Was this something that was on your radar throughout the 90s, that they had taken a lot of your ideas and that they were trying to develop them in a different way?
Oh no! I mean, once I finished doing Superman, I moved on and I did Christopher Columbus Discovery, and that took
Mm.
total control. I mean, of my time. There was no more. There was no more time to do Superboy or Superman. No question.
It's interesting, actually, on the Christopher Columbus. John Glenn directed Christopher Columbus, to take it all back to James Bond, and I know you parted ways with George P. Cosmatos. Is there any chance John Glenn might have directed Superman Reborn?
Mm, I don't think so.
Okay.
Look, John Glenn was a very nice man, very nice man,
Mm.
very professional on time, but Cosmatos was the better director. There's no question.
You mentioned something in the Q&A afterwards, that and we never knew this before, that you had the right to use any DC characters in your Superman movies. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct. And sadly enough, I didn't do it because I could have used Batman, I could have used Supergirl, I could have used Brainiac. I mean, all of the characters that appeared in a comic book with Superman. And there were a lot of comic books with Superman and Brainiac, or Superman and Supergirl, and I could have
Mm.
done that, but I didn't do it, sadly enough.
Why do you think that was? Was that you or Warner's, or who was it?
No, I think I had moved on, and after Superboy, I definitely after Superboy, I wanted to make a film again. After
Mm.
and that's when I did Columbus, and that's when instead of having Cosmatos, I had Glenn, and I repeat, Glenn is a wonderful guy, a very nice guy, but
Mm.
Cosmatos was the better director. There's no question, no question.
Mr. Salkind, I mean, having had such an indelible mark on the great American and international myth of Superman, have you come across any of the other versions that have come since? And what are your thoughts on them? Seen these newer versions, and do you have any thoughts on them?
Yes, I've seen them, and usually Royce and Clark was very good. The movies, I know Brian Singer, and now I don't think that his movie was as good as Superman 1, 2, or 3.
And did you tell him? Did you tell him that you think your movies are better than his? Just out of
Oh
curiosity.
no, I told him it's very good.
Well, before we let you go, Mr. Salkind, obviously we spoke about Superboy earlier on. Those were Clark Kent's adventures in college. I want to pitch a TV show idea that I have, and you can tell me if you'd be interested in producing it. So obviously you also made Santa Claus the movie, which we were talking about. What about Santa Claus the series? So it's Santa Claus in college. Would you be up for producing that? And I can write a few episodes.
I don't know.
Don't call us, we'll call you.
Mr. Salkind, I just want to thank you again for coming on the show. It's really been a pleasure and a privilege. I have these posters on the wall. Your name is all over them. I've grown up hearing your name in all the documentaries and everything that we've read about the series. These films, I know they're only movies, but these movies have shaped both myself and Rob in many different ways. Rob went into journalism because of his love of Clark Kent and that character. I became a police detective by profession because of my love for the character, and we have a substantial fan base who love these films and have shown them to their children and their grandchildren, and it's a generational love now for these pictures. And I just want to thank you very much for bringing it to the table back in the day when you brought the property to your father and convinced him to purchase it, and for making decisions like hiring Mario Puzo, hiring Dick Donner, hiring Tom Mankiewicz, all these people who you brought in, and for being involved in the casting and everything that you brought to the table. I just want to thank you sincerely for everything that you have done in bringing these pictures to our screens.
Very, very, very nice. I'm very happy to hear that.
Any final thoughts on Superman as an experience, Mr. Salkind, before we let you go?
Good experience, very good experience, very good experience. And I repeat, with Donna, we ended up being good friends. With Leslie, we
Good.
are good
That's great.
friends. So overall, it's a very nice part of my life, no question.
Excellent. Is there any upcoming projects you'd like to promote or anything like that before we go?
Yeah, Arthur and Stanley, the Stanley Kubrick film is very interesting. It's a friendship between Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. And out of that comes 2001. When I saw 2001, I was 13, and that's why I decided to make movies. That was the movie that made me decide to become a film producer.
Amazing. I can see why that would have an indelible mark like that. It is that kind of
Ah,
movie, isn't it?
movie, unbelievable movie.
Well, listen, we want to thank you once again, Mr. Salkind. Have a wonderful day, and as Alan always says, stay safe, stay super, and take
Okay,
care.
very good.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much. So, Rob, ILYA SALKInd.
He didn't go for my show idea. Alan.
No, you're another.
That was the big plan. It was going to put us on the map. Santa Claus the series. It's Santa Claus like you've never seen him before in college, and he didn't go for it.
Back to work tomorrow, Rob. Like,
God damn it!
like everyday schlubs. Imagine we could have been filming in Florida, Universal Studios, this time next week. Well done, sir. For everybody listening, it was Rob who arranged that interview, organised that interview, and yeah, well done. That was great.
Yeah, no, really, really enjoyed that, and I have to say a big hats off to David Kocher and his whole team that produced that wonderful Superman Reborn live reading. I think that was a big part of why we finally decided to reach out to Mr. Salkind.
Yeah,
because there was just so many unanswered questions after that we wanted to try and get a handle on, and I think we got to most of them, to be honest. Like he you know, a big question mark we had was, would Margot Kidder be involved in this? And he seemed to indicate that she would be, which is great. So
yeah,
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, and you know, he was just very open and honest about the Donner situation and how he feels about the movies. Yeah, I was very pleased with what he had to say, I have to say.
and he was very complimentary to everybody, even people who it's known, and he stated himself that, you know, he had fallen out with during the production of the movies, like, you know, like you said, Richard Donner, other directors and actors and people. You know, he hadn't a negative word to say about anybody. You know, he was very complimentary about people's work, and
I don't think even he would agree with that. I mean, he was pretty honest and frank about the Donner thing and how Donner, he perceived it as insulting him, which I think is fair enough to say.
But at least, you know, in hindsight, he still says he's a great director. He still thinks that if he had worked on the sequels, they would have been very strong. And I'm thrilled to know that, you know, things were settled as the years pushed on, and, you know, it wasn't left like that before Dick Donner passed away. But yeah, no, that it was great. It was great to chat to him. It's you know, you see interviews with people like that, and there's always things in the back of my mind. Like, I know that Jeff East question, but I was like, if I don't ask him, I'm never going to know. No one's ever going to ask this question about that photograph. That's always bugged me. So I was thrilled to get that out.
I think it has only bugged you, but anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. As a continuity buff. But yeah, no, that was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hats off to the man. And I have to say, I kind of meant to say this to him, and maybe I'll express it to him in another way. But like, one of the things I'm always conscious of when we're talking about movies and movie making and creative kind of mediums is that the directors and the actors tend to control the narrative around these things all the time.
Yeah.
And it's very, very easy to paint people like ILYA SALKInd as the bad guy in all of these situations.
Yeah.
So I think it is very, very important to hear their side of it sometimes. You know, and I speak from a little bit of experience there in terms of having to be the bad guy with the money who has to turn around and say, no, guys, we can't actually do this because it's going to cost too much money. You know, that's not always it's a bitter pill to swallow sometimes. And I think sometimes when you're watching these special feature retrospective documentaries on DVDs and stuff, it can make, you know, the actors and the directors feel like the heroes when actually, you know, if I had a blank checkbook, I'd be everybody's hero, you know, that kind of way. So, you know, I've a lot of respect and admiration for Mr. Salkind and a lot of producers like that, because these are old school movie men. Like they're actually out there making movies. They're not like David Zaslav or just these accountants who are out there now, you know?
Yeah. And look, all these films, all these projects are more than the sum of their parts. You know, they're actors, they're crewmen, they're producers, they're grip boys. It's not just Dick Donner or Christopher Reeve. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't for ILYA SALKInd, we wouldn't have these films. Because he came up with the idea of, let's turn this into something when nobody believed it could be done. Nobody believed at the time that you could make a legitimate Superman movie, and he brought it to his father, and you know, they bought the rights and everything, and they got the ball rolling, and without them we wouldn't have any of these movies. And to be honest, I don't think I'm overemphasizing it and saying that the entire landscape of comic book films would be in a totally different place, I think.
No, absolutely.
If these films hadn't been made, and if he hadn't done what he did, and you can question decisions that were made as the films went on, you know, hiring and firing and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we have these movies, we love these movies, and if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't. I
tell you one thing. I was literally looking this film up prior to us going on the Zoom call, and I was kicking myself that I haven't seen either of them. I am definitely going to watch The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers in the coming weeks.
I think I'm almost sure I've seen one of them at some point. But yeah, that's not a bad idea. Check them out. I don't think I've seen the Christopher Columbus movie either, to be honest.
No, I haven't seen that. That's a big must watch on my, because again I mentioned John Glenn directed that.
Yeah.
You know, coming off the back of James Bond, John Glenn worked on Superman the movie as well. So really interesting. And Marlon Brando is in that. Like, after everything that happened on Superman, he came back and he worked on that with the Salkinds. Tom Selleck is in it. It's a really weird looking kooky movie, and it was a tremendous flop, but I am very interested to check that one out as well. Now, so we are going to have a look at some letters. We have a little bit of a backlog here, so Alan, why don't we jump into our Metropolis mailbag?
Yeah, sounds good. Like you said there, we've got a good few there in relation to a couple of the last episodes, and even one in particular in relation to an episode from a few years ago, which I'm excited to listen to. So yeah, let's check them out.
Absolutely. So we have a nice letter here from Tyler, first of all, from Krypton Report podcast. Very nice things to say about our episode on the trailer. And he also he also said something lovely about my little soapbox statement about accents.
The accents,
people might remember I took it to heart when a couple of people told us that they didn't want to send in voice notes because they were ashamed of their accents. Tyler writes, it made me sad because the cultural aspect of the shows are what make it exciting. I love hearing the two of you, the aspiring Kryptonians, Geek of Steel, Nathan McKenzie, our friend, and Connor from The Last Sons of Krypton talk about Superman. It shows the character brings us all together, and I get to hear different opinions. I love it. My son Solomon, great name, has joined me when I've spoken with Nate before, and he gets a thrill out of talking with someone in another country. When I told my kids that I was recording something to send for your podcast, they thought it was so neat that you were Irish. Wow. It's the first time for everything. Solomon has been studying holiday traditions from around the world and has been fascinated with different cultures and countries. Yes, Superman was created in America and was to represent an ideal America that we've gotten so far away of, where America was to be the place all people could unite. As an American, I think our accents are lame and boring. Well, I don't agree with you on that, Tyler, but otherwise a lovely email. We recently learned that we have a lot of downloads in Singapore. Odd. Interesting. Yeah, we've got a lot of, if you go through the countries that listen to our show, Alan, I must show you sometime. There's some funky ones in there. Like we do get listens around the world. And then there are countries where we will just get one download ever, and you're like
Ireland.
What's happening that day? I like Ireland, yeah. All this to say, please know hearing the accents enhance our experience as listens about the world and how the character impacts the world. Please share this with your listener who is ashamed of their accent. It is nothing to be ashamed of. Be proud of where you come from. Amen. Cool. Thanks very much, Tyler. Do you want to read this from Dharmesh?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my thoughts on the trailer. So this is in relation to the Superman trailer. We did an episode there a few weeks back on. I like what I'm seeing. It looks colourful and positive. David Cornsweet looks terrific as Superman. I believe in Gunn's vision of the character. But, in capital letters, the teaser doesn't tease the story. They have teased lots of fun shots, but it was difficult to figure out what the story was going to be. There are lots of characters to keep track of, which does ring alarm bells. But that does not mean the film won't be good. It's a teaser after all. I checked out the Guardians of the Galaxy teaser trailer to see if it was edited in a similar style. It was, but it was shorter. The opening of Superman Take Me Home was interesting. Does that relate to the theme of the movie? An alien trying to find his place on Earth? Are the other heroes his extended family? I like Crypto the dog. I think it's the right time to introduce him to the audience without it looking silly. Holt was always my choice for Lex. I'm glad they got him. And the film will do big business. It's Superman, the daddy of all comic book superheroes. I can't wait to see it. By the way, Christopher Reeve is still the Superman GOAT. Amen, brother. Happy New Year. Yeah. And again, I'm not too upset about the fact we didn't get too much of the story. If anything, it is something that really irritates me. At this stage of my life, I really don't like seeing trailers that just show the entire film. I'm happy to go into this not knowing anything about the story, to be honest with you. Now, we do know that there's a little bit of kind of All-Star Superman in there. We do know that there's a little bit of whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. But I'm happy to go in blind enough to this, to be honest with you.
He makes a good point there, though, as well. It is a teaser trailer. Yes. Teaser trailers don't tell you about the story. They give you a teaser of just
not to be confused
with
the teaser for the teaser. Don't forget that.
For the teaser. if you remember the Superman Returns teaser trailer, it was just Jor-El doing a voiceover and then lots of
people
kind of atmospheric shots. And then the Man of Steel trailer was just kind of shots of Kansas, like really tight, extreme close-ups of like a washing line and rain hitting the grass and, you know, like a little cart that baby Clark was pulling and stuff like that. So, I wouldn't expect to see too much of the story in something like this. But, great letter. Thanks very much, Dermot.
We probably won't have to wait too long for a full trailer at this point. I mean, we're into February now.
Probably not. No, now, they are doing these things a lot later than they used to. Like, we just saw a Fantastic Four trailer.
Yes.
Like, for the first time the other day. Like, that's very different to how they would have done things 10 years ago. But I think it's just the proliferation of these things online now is so different to what it was when we were growing up and stuff that you kind of nearly need to do them a lot closer to the time to generate the hype. But
what were your thoughts on the Fantastic Four trailer?
Yeah, I thought it looked good. It was certainly it looked more like appointment viewing to me than the Captain America trailer. God bless that movie is rumored to be coming out any day now, but I just can't really seem to summon up the interest for it.
I really hope it's good. I really hope the Captain America film is good, but I'm just not excited for it. I'm just burnt out with MCU at the minute, but I hope it is good. I love Captain.
And I've said this, I liked that Captain America Winter Soldier
TV
show they did on Disney Plus, but that was like 8 years ago now. I'm just like I'm not as burnt out as you on the MCU, I don't think. I have liked some of the stuff they've done. And I by the way, haven't seen anything in the cinema. I'm talking about the She-Hulk show. I thought was really good. Other than the CGI, I thought that was a great show.
Yeah.
Ms. Marvel started off great and then kind of petered out a bit. And the Captain America show, same thing. It was a bit of fun. I really liked Anthony Mackie in it.
Anthony Mackie's great. I love him. I don't know how much it
added. Like the end of Endgame made it pretty clear that he was becoming Captain America, and then they kind of retroactively decided on the TV show that no, he actually has to go on a journey first. And you're like, wait, what? and WandaVision started out great as well. That was really great.
Enjoyed
for a
that.
Weeks.
Yeah, that was real. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. I said it before. I just think they should have taken a little bit of a break, given everybody a breather, and then kind of started slowly, picture by picture, show by show again. I find it a little bit meandering that they just don't. It's a bit directionless, I think, or has been for the last couple of years. It's the only thing I'm kind of just.
I've heard you say that, and I've heard a lot of sensible people say that. And creatively, I underline that word creatively. That would absolutely have been the right choice, creatively.
Yeah, but you're not making money if you're not making stuff. If you're not making products.
Why in heaven's name would they follow up a movie that made how many $1 billion and say, right, let's go on holidays for a couple of years? That would just never happen in a million years. And even James Gunn saying it now, we're not making movies until the script is ready. Let's just watch that space, James Gunn, because I don't believe you. Like that is not that's never going to happen. These things, this whole thing is built on greed, and it's built on commerce. It's built on capitalism. These things have to make money, and sometimes making money doesn't always mean.
I think the other factor with it is, though, it's hard to get amped up for something in the cinema when you're kind of getting it at home on Disney Plus fairly quick. Like it's, I only said this to Stacey. I think you said there something about not being to cinema. I have not been to the cinema, man, in nearly 2 years, I'd say at this point. Between work and home life and all that kind of stuff. And they've actually opened a new cinema 20 minutes down the road. And I live in the middle of nowhere, as you know. And they've opened a new cinema. I don't think they realise that the cinema industry is in trouble. And we were going to go to see Nosferatu last week. And then I injured my foot. I broke my foot last week, as you know. So we didn't get to go and see it. But I was just saying there, like, it's hard to get amped up to go and see the Captain America movie in the cinema when I know 4, 5, 6 weeks later I'm going to be able to watch it at home. And it kind of makes it less of an event as well, I think. Like when the original, like I was at the premiere for Iron Man. I won tickets on a radio show on radio stations to see Iron Man in 2008. And like
the Irish premiere.
The Irish premiere. Yeah, okay.
Sure, emphasize that. Grauman's Chinese theatre, like next to Robert Downey Jr.
It was still a big event. Like for the first couple, for all those movies, there were events. It was event viewing. I say to even Doctor Strange, who Stacey had no interest in, and I knew a little about. like, you know, we had a date night to go see Doctor Strange in the cinema because we knew it was all leading up to this, you know, Avengers 3, Avengers 4, whatever. It's just kind of taking the sparkle off it a little bit, I think, when, you know, in a few weeks it's just there on TV.
I'm going to sound like a wanker here, Alan, okay? And I apologise in advance. I've seen loads of great films in the last couple of years. The difference is I haven't seen any superhero films in the last few years. And I would stress that, like, I love superhero movies. I love this genre. I want it to be great. I want Superman to be great. These films have budgets that are bigger than the gross domestic profits of countries. And the marketing budgets they have are so astronomical. People just don't even realize. Like, there are so many other films that get made that don't even have, like, a ghost of a fraction of the kind of marketing budgets that, you know, Avengers movies get. And what happens then is they only are in the cinema for like a second and then they go away. I'm going to read a couple of movies that I've seen recently that I absolutely loved. Heretic in the cinema, great movie.
Yeah.
Companion last week, really fun movie. Baby Girl, pretty good. Long Legs, pretty good.
Yeah.
Not great, worth watching.
The Substance.
The Substance was one of the best films I've ever seen and the best film of 2024. And I'm so glad that it's up for all these awards and stuff like that. And seeing that in a cinema, man, you're talking about stuff coming out on the streaming a couple of weeks later. What a shame it would have been to have not seen that in the cinema and not stood up at the end of that film and heard people in front of me going, Jesus! And I heard this woman behind me saying, but Mary told us it was really good. And I was like, just all these shocked people that couldn't believe what they'd just seen. Cuckoo, I saw earlier in the year. There's great films coming out all the time. And what was that one? Maxine, the trilogy with Mia Goth.
Yeah.
There's so many great films coming out right now, but they don't get the market. You have to seek them out. That they're not going to like plaster them in front of you the way they do with these superhero movies. So, you know, I'm kind of jumping on the soapbox here again, but there are great films and they're great. You just have to make the appointment yourself. And there are really bad films too that are worth seeing in the cinema. Gladiator 2, a pile of piss. It was so bad.
You know, it's not great. I didn't think it was as bad as you led me to believe it was. It wasn't great. It wasn't great, but I was really expecting it to be absolute dog shit. And I was like, but it was all right. It is what it is. Like, you know,
with respect, I don't think you get quite as annoyed with films that play the hits as I do. And that film, true. My God, did that film play the hits? Oh my God, did it play that?
I have to say, when those sharks in the Colosseum, I did have to roll my eyes.
But I didn't like. That's the thing that happened. I don't mind that.
Oh man, there's no way they got sharks in. Like, I understand they had animals and stuff, but like, how the hell do you transport a live shark to Rome?
Actually, that's a good point. I'm nearly positive I read that. I'm nearly positive I remember reading that in my
I don't understand. Like, unless you
history.
bred them in Rome, how do you, like, you can't put them in a tank and drive them? Yeah, I just don't understand how that would have worked. There's no way.
That's a good point. See, I've watched too many James Bond movies, and that's a common issue in James Bond movies. Is like, you can't keep sharks in captivity; they just die. So, like, all those James Bond movies where there's sharks running around in a little tank or in someone's swimming pool, they'd just be dead. So sorry, Blofeld. Will we get back to this?
We're way off track there.
This is a lovely voice note we got from Lorenzo Valdez, who's written in before. He wrote in about the John Newton interview I did, which I have to say I really enjoyed doing. And
it was a great episode.
He sent in this lovely voice note about it, which we will listen to now.
Alan and Rob, this is Lorenzo Valdez calling in regarding the John Haymes Newton interview. I enjoyed that interview immensely. I had so much fun listening to it. And specifically, I wanted to call in to touch on something that John Haymes Newton said at one point in the interview when he seemed to sort of lament the lack of differentiation that he placed between his portrayals of Superboy and of Clark. And it was funny to me to hear him say that because it's precisely that lack of differentiation that is part of why I've always preferred his portrayal of Superboy and of Clark to that of Gerard Christopher's on that show. Gerard Christopher was basically doing a Christopher Reeve impression, and a quite good one, but I've always been a fan who has preferred the more post-crisis take on the character of Clark being the real person and Superman, or in this case Superboy, being the disguise, and that's what John Haymes Newton was doing, basically. And, I've heard people complain more recently about the lack of differentiation between Tyler Hoechlin's portrayals of Superman and of Clark. And it's never bothered me with Hoechlin, and it's never bothered me with John James Newton either. I love his portrayal of the character. He's a big part of why season 1 is my favorite season of Superboy. And so if John James Newton is listening to this, I'd like him to know that I love his portrayal of Superboy and of Clark, and I'm glad that he portrayed the character the way that he did. Klana forever and always. Bye-bye.
Very good.
What'd you make of that, Alan?
Yeah, I get it. And, he mentioned Tyler Hoechlin, bring it back to Lois and Clark. Dean Kane's Superman and Clark Kent aren't that dissimilar either. It's definitely the post-crisis take. There is differences there, I know, but it's that buffoon Clark, that kind of nerdy buffoon Clark it doesn't really exist in that universe either. So yeah, I never had any issue with John. I think John did a fine job, to be honest, and GC as well, Gerard. I never got the impression watching Gerard that it was a Christopher Reeve impression as such myself. Maybe it is. I always kind of see him as this kind of like super bro kind of version of Superman, of Superboy, which I like. But good point.
I think in the season 2, in the second season, he's definitely doing a Christopher Reeve impression. He's way with the greatest of respect to the man. I don't think it worked. It's very like Saved by the Bell nerd type thing. He's very goofy. He's very He's falling all over. He's talking about his bug collection a lot. And I think they moved away from that very quickly in season 3, and it was a lot more relaxed, and it was a lot more post-crisis. The Clark in season 3 and 4, Gerard Christopher's Clark in season 3 and 4 is a lot more down to earth and a lot more kind of like a guy you could actually hang out with, a lot like the Dean Cain one. If I have an issue with John Newton, it's not so much that I have an issue with his Clark. I actually love John Newton's Clark Kent. It's more that I don't know that they did enough interesting stuff with his Superboy. I don't think they gave him enough interesting stuff to do other than kind of flying stuff and sort of special effects like that. There's a bit where he apprehends Lex and he's like, titanium and phosphorus? Didn't your mother ever tell you not to play with volatile chemicals? Or so? He's very, very kind of like quippy one-liner type, sarcastic type Superboy, and he's very stern, almost like George Reeves.
Yeah.
Whereas I prefer more of a happy, smiling sort of Superman. But just to reiterate, though, John Newton is my favorite of the two. I love them both. They're both friends of the podcast now. But I absolutely...
so strange to say. Yeah, they've both been on. That's crazy.
Yeah, let's go on to Jan's, because this is a... Strap yourself in for this one, Alan.
Here we go. Howdy, Alan and Rob. I had such a wonderful time listening to the 2 episodes you guys returned with in December after the brief hiatus. Your show is consistently a pleasure to listen to, and I think it's possibly my favourite Superman podcast.
Wow.
That's so nice to say, and I have to say that
I didn't even read that bit. That's amazing.
That literally blows my mind.
Do you know what it is? Jan listens to us on one of those weird podcatchers that only we are on. So we're probably the only Superman podcast on his podcaster of choice. So he has no way of listening to Always Hold On to Smallville, Digging for Kryptonite, the Krypton Report, The House of L, all these amazing podcasts that are out there. He just can't listen to them. So naturally we'd be his favourite. Anyway, sorry, go on.
However, I strongly disagreed with something you guys said during your discussion of Superman and Lois. Now that it's wrapped, the dismissal of Tyler Hoechlin's Superman is something I cannot stand for. I tweeted an overly lengthy response, and Alan, probably irritated at the notifications flying into his phone. Not at all. Told me that I could always email the show, so here we go. Sure, he isn't the best actor to play Superman. Still Reeve. In brackets, but when looking at the specific iteration of the character, he really feels like a jack of all trades as far as combining the best elements of each one and leaving behind the weaknesses.
Interesting.
He had the earnest charm of Reeve, the down-to-earth vibe and developed adult relationships of Dean Cain, whose version of Clark, like Tyler, felt like a guy you could imagine grabbing a beer with. I'd absolutely agree with that.
Agreed.
The stern sense of command of Tom Welling without being a stick in the mud like Welling's Clark often was. Agreed.
Okay,
And to top it off, the effects for his superpowers were directly modelled after the Henry Cavill incarnation. That's true too. He also got to explore better written versions of many of the storylines that Henry Cavill got to boot. Moreover, I have to vehemently disagree that his Clark and Superman were the same. His Clark was a very laid-back, dorky, suburban dad. His Superman was much more on, quotes, rigid in body movement and more commanding in voice. I will concede that visually it's the least they've ever done to make Clark and Superman look different, but I do think that both were played differently. Anyway, long ramble made short, I think Tyler is a fantastic Superman, and he's probably my favourite. Shout out to Michael Bailey for agreeing with me. However, I must say my favourite Superman is often the one I'm watching. They're all so good, except for the one recent one that a certain fan base won't let go of. But even he's like fine instead of bad. Love the show. From the bottom of my heart, I hope both of you are having a fantastic year so far. Can't wait to continue listening. Thoughts on that, Rob?
First of all, that's one of the nicest emails we've ever gotten.
Yeah,
in spite of his passionate disagreement. I honestly agree with like maybe 95% of what he said there, to be honest.
Yeah.
And again, like going back to kind of what I was saying about John Newton, I think when I really sit down and think about it, if I have a problem with Tyler Hoechlin, it's not even that. It's not that. I know you and Zach have talked about that they don't do enough to differentiate. It's actually not that. It's more just that I don't think they did enough interesting stuff with him as Superman in the costume. And I think there's like maybe one or two scenes I can think of in season 1 and season 2. There's the lovely bit with the boy in the flashback where
yes, with the car. Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. They should have done way more stuff like that. Would be
I don't think it's Hoechlin himself that I have the issue with, because I thought Hoechlin, and I think I said that previously, like in the Supergirl episodes when he is playing the more dorky persona Clark, and then I love that scene of him landing in the DOE.
Yeah,
and shaking the guy's hands and everything. That was like, I really felt after kind of being bereft of live action Superman that I could relate to through the Snyder one. I really was like, oh, this is great. Love all this. Like you said, I think it's the writing.
Yeah, but is that him as an actor or sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I like the way that was written, I thought he did a good job with that. I just don't think he was really given the more interesting stuff as Superman, like you said there, to really
the more interesting stuff or the more hopeful, positive, comforting,
positive,
feel good stuff.
Yeah, hopeful, positive, feel good.
I think he was given incredibly interesting stuff.
He was like in terms of all the storylines and stuff. He was, but yeah, I really like that. My Superman has to be hopeful and positive. He really does. That's what I like. That's what I look for in it, and I just didn't get that. And to be honest, I can see. Like you have to step back and you have to have a suspension of disbelief. I can close my eyes and kind of pretend that, you know, you could work in the Lois and Clark Daily Planet and not know that Clark Kent was Superman. Why do
you think that is?
I don't know, man. I think he does look different with the glasses and the hair, and like when he's Clark, his persona is not that dorky nerd Clark. He's a cool guy. He's an athlete. You should be able to not really differentiate as much because there's no real persona there as such. But personality-wise, they feel different to me. Like I think they look different, hair-wise, glasses-wise. I think there is a difference there. The Superman in Superman and Lois just looks like Clark Kent with his glasses off. I don't get that impression from the Dean Cain one. And again, maybe I'm just biased because I grew up with them. But like that, like
I'll admit, I think there's a both from you and from me. I think there is definitely a touch of that
of nostalgia,
and absolutely clouding our judgment here a little bit. Yeah, and like I think if we spent a lot more time with Tyler Hoechlin and really engaged with it, we probably would. Now, but I have to say this because I feel like I ended up falling into a pit of negativity last time as well. I really, really like Tyler Hoechlin, and I think he did the dorky dad stuff is so unique to his version.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful, and I'm so grateful that we have that. Like, I'm thinking of that moment in season 1 of the show where he's telling the family about the corn festival, and they're all looking at him like he has two heads, and he's really genuinely enthusiastic about this, like, just lame ass country bumpkin corn festival that they're all going to. Like, he's so excited and enthusiastic to share this with them. I love that. And like, I'm thinking of other bits, like so many just goofy, dorky moments with him and like Kyle and Lana and Lois. Like you could feel that it was genuinely coming from him, and the chemistry he had with Elizabeth Bitsy Tulloch was fantastic. Like I've said it to you before. The man is like, I think he's 38. He's like a couple of years older than me.
Yeah.
And by God, did I believe that he was a 40-something father of teenagers. Like, and you know, Jan writes there, he feels like a guy you could imagine grabbing a beer with. 100%. You know, like I absolutely think that's the case. For me, I just like I'm thinking of that. Like, there's a scene in the first season where he's Superman and he's talking to Lana. And I think that was the scene where I was like, "Oh God, this is the same guy." Like it felt no different to how Clark would talk to Lana. And I go back to Dean Cain there. I think if you look at, let's say, a season 2 episode of Lois and Clark, and you look at the way Superman post-crisis disguise Superman talks to Lois versus, say, a normal Daily Planet scene where Clark is talking to Lois, they are quite different. Like you can, as you say, if you squint hard enough, you can believe it. But whereas in this show, I'm squinting as much as I can, and I think, and we've talked about this before. Lois and Clark is a silly show. It's like in the very first episode, they explain the glasses disguise by Clark just looking at his parents and going, "Look, Mum and Dad, it'll work, I promise." And they kind of go,
because it won't be me.
It won't be me. It's like they're actually saying to the audience, "This is a silly show. Let's go along with it and have a little bit of fun."
You have to get on board
Whereas
with it.
Superman and Lois is as serious as a heart attack, and multiple people have heart attacks in the show to prove that to you. It's a very, very serious show, and thus, if you're going to have that serious a show, you have to take things like the glasses disguise just as seriously, I think. And I don't think they did. I think they possibly could have gone the Mark Waid route where they go, "Oh, well, he studied the Meisner technique of acting, and, you know, he tried out all these different types of glasses to dull his eyes." Or they could have come up with some bullshit excuse to make it feel,
but see,
more
the problem though,
they didn't go near any of that, and they just said, "Well, it's Superman, you just go along with the glasses."
But the problem is,
and you can't when it's a more serious version.
The problem with the setting, though, I think, Rob, is that he is going back to where he grew up, and all these people like Lana knew him growing up. So you can't just go back 10 years later and have a completely different personality and be falling over yourself. I'm not saying that he has to be the dorky version, but like there has to be a middle ground. Like I don't really know exactly what you would do there.
I think they came up with a semi-viable solution there in that he was gone for a long time. He left when he was like
15.
I don't even think he left when he was 18. I think he left when he was 15.
Yeah, I think he was 15 on the show, yeah.
He was gone for like a long, long time, and then he immediately went to Metropolis and like never returned. Oh, he briefly came back to Smallville and saw that Lana was marrying Kyle, and then left for good. Then,
right?
I think that's what it was. So, you know, okay, maybe I don't know. But again, we're not criticizing Tyler Hoechlin, the actor here. We're criticizing the show. Jan's talking specifically about Tyler Hoechlin, the acting, and I think he makes some strong points there. You know, about him being a jack of all trades.
To be honest, I don't think there's a Superman actor that I really don't like as an actor themselves in the role. I obviously don't like the Snyder films. I've spoken about that before. I don't like Man of Steel. I definitely don't like Batman v Superman. I don't have a huge issue with Henry Cavill himself. I don't think there is an actor from the team of actors who have played Superman over the last 80 years that I really dislike. Like Kirk Allen doesn't have much presence. He's not fantastic. But there's no one I really, really dislike. They just all have different places.
I really dislike Kirk Allen.
Kirk Allen, I know you do. But they just all have different places on the totem pole for me. And yeah, Tyler, I have no doubt
you really dislike some of them. You're just saying that.
Who do I really dislike? Who do I like? I genuinely don't dislike Henry Cavill. I don't dislike him. Do I think he's a great actor? No, I don't. Do I think he could pull off a serious dramatic role? No, I don't. Did he do fine? Yeah, he did fine. Was he Christopher Reeve? No. There's no one I genuinely don't like for their portrayal itself. I just have preferences. And okay. to be honest, I can't. I struggle to buy into that world. Like you said, it's a serious world. It has to be taken seriously because that's the setting of it. And I have to be able to be on board with that whole thing. And I don't believe for a second that he would have rocked up and that Lana wouldn't have said, Clark, you're clearly Superman straight away. But anyway, we'll move on. There is a very brief email from my good friend Neil Jackson as well, Rob. Neil just sent us in a few lines there in relation to the face flight footage of David Cornsweet. He just said, what do you think? I really like the face. I really like the face-facing flight. Is that right? The face-facing flight. I don't think they have the eyes quite right, but I really like the dynamics of it. We've had top views, back views, side views, etc., etc. It's good. They are trying something new. Neil has become one of our strongest supporters. He's constantly sending me messages telling me how much he's enjoying the podcast, which I find so funny because Neil hates Superman. And always, I met Neil years ago. I spoke about him previously. I met Neil years ago playing DC Universe Online. We had a league going there. Shout out to the Emerald Knights. But he thought Superman is the most dull, boring, bland character going. So the fact that he listens to the show and sends me these messages of support, I really appreciate that. Thanks, Neil. What did you think of the David Cornsweet footage?
I thought it was a quick little TV spot, and it had like 2 new interesting shots in it and fantastic stuff. Let's move on. And then the internet melted down about it again. Have you ever filmed anything with a GoPro, Alan?
No, never. Never.
So if you put a head mount on someone and you point a GoPro at their face and you have them doing something mad or extreme, like
flying,
rappelling down the side of a building or skydiving or anything like that. I have filmed people rappelling down a building a couple of times. We've done whitewater rafting. We've done that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. When you film someone at that angle, it looks a bit odd. And sometimes if they move too quickly, it can look a bit strange, right?
Okay.
Initially, I'll be honest, I initially thought, okay, maybe there's weird CGI there. Then James Gunn came out and said, nope, it's all practical. We did it all for real. So I'm assuming that means they filmed David Cornsweet on some kind of a rig or on wires or whatever it is. And then he said all the snow stuff was all real. They shot it on location. We've pictures of them on location. That's all fine too. I think he's doing some weird, interesting, fun stuff with the camera, and the film looks visually very ambitious and really cool, and they're doing cool stuff that I don't think they've ever really done before. And for all the people I keep saying this, for all the people out there that said, oh, this is going to be a churned out MCU Superman movie, that is not the case. This looks really visually ambitious. I'm saying the word ambitious because ambitious can sometimes mean that not every decision works.
Yep.
But I think, and I think this could be a thing that doesn't work. That might be a shot that will look weird in the film. I don't know. But I think it's interesting and cool that he's making choices like that, and he's doing them practically. It's not all just computers, which the MCU frequently is. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like, cool that he's doing it,
Yeah,
I would take that. And sorry to keep doing this, but I would take that in a heartbeat over some of the. Zack Snyder made a lot of cool, ambitious decisions that didn't work. And, like I would never say that his films just look like a generic MCU thing either. Like, they don't. But like, his visual style appeals to me a lot less than what this seems to be going for, is what I'd say.
I'm going to keep it simple. I thought it looked badass. If you pause at a certain angle, his pupil is a little bit to the left or whatever. Who gives a shit? I don't care. I'm seeing Superman flying. I got Top Gun Maverick feels from the small clip that I see. I love that movie. I had so much fun watching it in the cinema. I wasn't expecting much from it. And I thought it was cool. And then I went online and it was just a dumpster fire of meltdown of nonsense on it. It was a 4-second clip. I thought it was kick-ass. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. The Top Gun Maverick thing, it's exciting to hear that come up again and again. I know my friend Parker mentioned it. Now you've mentioned it. James Gunn himself did make that comparison before we ever even saw the trailer. And so, they obviously have that at the forefront of their minds. They're trying to make this like Top Gun Maverick. So it'll be interesting to see if they pull that off. I hope they do, And it's like a lot of the vibes I'm getting this are similar to the vibes I got going into Superman Returns. And like, I would love this to be the film I wanted Superman Returns to be.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would. And look, part of Superman is this power fantasy. And as a kid, we all ran around with towels wrapped around us pretending we could fly. The flying is meant to be fun. Flying hasn't been fun in Superman in a long time. I don't think. Like, really, realistically, it's been very bland. It's been, arms behind yourself and you're just kind of pointing, and they're like, really the only person who did an absolutely superb job of it was Christopher Reeve. I don't want to keep harping back to Christopher Reeve all the time, but he really did make it look like he was flying. Like, he was so graceful. Maybe it was his pilot's background. I don't know. His theater background. I don't know. The way he flew, the way he took off, like, so much so that I'd mimicked those movements as a kid when I was dressing up as Superman or playing Superman or jumping off the couch or whatever, It wasn't just these hard landings and these hard takeoffs and stuff. I don't want to see that all the time. I've seen that a lot. Superman doesn't need to do that. I thought this looked like fun. And when I'm sitting in the theater and I'm watching him fly, I want to have fun like I did with Top Gun Maverick. And it feel like you're in that plane with them. I want to feel like I'm out there, gliding through the North Pole or wherever he is with him in that moment. And that's what I got from this. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Actually, just very briefly to go back to Jan's email there, I would actually say that those shows, Supergirl and Superman and Lois, did a great job with the flying. And I can actually think... Just off the top of my head, I can think of a couple of really, really cool flying things they did in those shows that just were great and were better than anything they did in the movies over the past 20 years, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm not even really going to talk about Superman Returns because I hated the overuse of the CGI when CGI was not necessary for a lot of that flying with Brandon, who I think did a fine job himself, but who face shots that just didn't need to be CGI'd when they were doing them so much better 30 years beforehand. Is that
again, Superman and Lois, it was like they couldn't do that, so they had to use the actor, and it always looked better as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some Instagram messages, I think.
We do, and we have a lovely voice message from our good friend Mike Chernisky, who has become another great supporter of the show. This is lovely. He went back and has been listening to older episodes. And he sent this in response to our Bibos B movie episode on Masters of the Universe. And I think a lot of people...
I love that episode.
A lot of people, and I know you are going to find this very interesting, especially.
And just to shout out, if we're going to talk about Masters of the Universe, I just want to shout out to John Irwin, who passed away this week, the voice of Prince Adam and He-Man. May he rest in peace. What a legend. Anyway, let's go.
Take it away, Mike.
Hey, guys. So, I've been catching up on your podcast over the last few weeks. And I just listened to your Masters of the Universe episode. So I was about 8 when that came out. And I got to see it in the theater as a part of a double feature with Garbage Pail Kids. And it was really fun to listen to you guys talk about that. I remember being vaguely disappointed by the movie when I was a kid because, while there were cool parts and stuff, I wanted the entire thing to be on Eternia. But something that was really cool for me is when I was 8, we were living in Lakeview Terrace, which is part of Los Angeles, and that's where they actually filmed the food stand that Julie works at. And the food stand was just down the street from us, and while I have no memory of knowing that it was being filmed there or anything, we did recognize the food stand, and we would go there every so often, so that was pretty cool. You had said in the podcast you wondered if anyone would have even noticed the post-credit scene, or if there were any big movies at the time with post-credit scene. And they did happen from time to time. Ferris Bueller's Day Off had one of the most famous ones. And while I can't say this for sure, double features were a big thing in the 80s, especially in the US. So if the movies were positioned correctly, you would see the post-credit scene before watching the next movie. The funny thing is that when I saw the double feature of Garbage Pail Kids and Masters of the Universe was the second movie. So, yeah, we wouldn't have seen that scene. I didn't find out about it myself until a couple years later, I think, watching it on video. Anyway, really enjoying the podcast. Really appreciate you guys.
Excellent.
That is amazing. What did you make of that, Alan? As the seasoned Motu man of the two of us, what did you think of that?
First thing I want to say is, anytime I pass a KFC or see somebody eating a bucket of chicken, I think of that food stand. I remember being a kid wanting to know what the hell a bucket of chicken was, because we didn't have KFC here back then. I don't think. We definitely didn't have it in Waterford anyway. Number two, yeah, the credit scene. I told the story before about how, I was watching my grandparents. I was out in the dining room, and next to my aunt or my father, someone came in and was like, he comes back at the end. He comes back in and being so excited to go in and watch it. Garbage Pail Kids, I've heard about. I've watched reviews online about it. It looks terrible. Kind of a rip of the Cabbage Patch dolls, but they're all gross. I think it started off as a trading card. They were trading cards, and they were all like, snotster and all this kind of stuff, and they had, bubbles of snot coming out of their nose, and they decided to make it into a movie and stuff. I've never seen it, but yeah, I think I'd give it to Masters of the Universe in that double bill over Garbage Pail Kids.
That interesting point he made though about how the stinger scenes were designed nearly for double bills, and you could potentially see them if you were watching a double bill or something.
That's great.
I never thought about that before. Just on you mentioned KFC and fried chicken. I don't know why we're talking about this. Well, Popeye's chicken was a big part of Supergirl.
That's true.
I have reason to believe that the very first Kentucky Fried Chicken opened up in Liffey Valley Shopping Centre in 1998 or 1999
in Dublin, yeah.
And in Dublin, where I'm from, and they opened a big cinema there around the same time. I saw The World Is Not Enough. I think I saw the first Spider-Man there. A lot of the big sort of movies around. But the reason to tie it all back to DC and stuff, the Warner Brothers Studio store was in Liffey Valley, and that place was shit cool, man. I loved that so much. You'd go into the Warner Brothers Studio store, and they'd have animation cells, like one-of-a-kind animation cells from Batman the Animated Series that you could just buy.
I never knew there was a Warner Brothers store in Dublin.
Yeah. I'd say it was probably one of the only ones in Europe, to be honest.
Wow.
But and it was there from 1999 until kind of the mid 2000s, and I remember it was like 1999, so it was a couple of years after Batman and Robin, but there were still like a lot of Batman and Robin stuff in there. And what else? They had loads and loads of cool stuff in that place. I loved it. But yeah, just little memory lane tangent there. Sorry about that.
See, I never would. We'd go to Liffey Valley a lot, kind of now on the way into Dublin from this side of the country, from Galway, because you travel east, you pass Liffey Valley to get into Dublin. But back in those days, I would have been coming up from Waterford, from the south, and I was just in the city centre. I never would have been out around the Liffey Valley, so I never knew that there was a Warner Brothers store. Oh my God.
You see, I don't know if we've really talked about it, and because it's not important and nobody cares, but like in the 90s, Ireland suddenly had loads of money, and like ordinary people suddenly became rich for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's why they could open like ridiculous shops like the Warner Brothers Studio store, where rich people could just waste money on crap they don't need.
What a time to be alive. What a time
to be alive.
We have a message on Instagram from Nathan McKenzie. Nathan, obviously, from the Superman, the Animated Series podcast. He says, "Hi guys, it's taken me a while, but I finally started to binge Superboy. I remember I remember watching it as a kid, especially coming home after school, but it's good to watch it again. I'm up to the first Bizarro episodes in season 2, and I'm loving the series so far. I'm currently listening to your interview with Jared Christopher. Absolutely loving it. Such a great interview. All the best. Take care, my friends." That's great that he's enjoyed it.
Can I share some exclusive news with you right now, Alan?
Do. Go for it.
About the future of our podcasting careers.
You're opening a Warner Brothers store.
I'm opening the second ever. No, and this wouldn't apply to Superboy anyway because it's not a Warner Brothers anyway. With the year that's in it, there's a new Superman movie coming out. A lot of people talking about Superman again. Everyone's excited about Superman. our good friend Zach, our great friend Zach,
Yeah.
has hosted Always Hold On to Smallville, the definitive Smallville rewatch podcast, for the past, however many. I think he's coming up on 9 or 10 years now at this stage. Anthony does a wonderful rewatch show of the George Reeves Show. Our great, great friend Matt Truex, arguably part of the reason we even set this show up at all.
No arguably about it. Absolutely.
No arguably about it. Absolutely the reason. He hosted the ultimate definitive Lois and Clark rewatch podcast. I am here today to share this with you. I am going to start a Superboy rewatch podcast.
Excellent.
As God is my witness, it's going to happen. You will be a big part of it. Other people will be a big part of it. People we've never heard from before will be a big part of it. It's going to happen. Going to do every single episode. I've got a cool idea for how we're going to do the format. We're going to jump around a little bit. It's not just going to be one episode after the other, because I don't want to spend like 2 years saying, don't worry guys, it gets good eventually.
Better than this.
we're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to enjoy the craziness and the weirdness and the kind of schlocky B-moviness of season 1, and then we're going to jump forward to when it actually becomes a really cool Superman show in Superman 3, season 3. It's going to just be kind of a cool little jazz riff of a rewatch podcast, but we are going to do it. And I don't know, will it be on this feed or a separate feed? It'll be kind of a sister show to All Star Superfan, and I'm really, really excited. Will you join me for some of this adventure, Alan?
Absolutely. I will be there with my cape. I have my Superman cape behind me. I will wear it. I am, if anybody should do that, Rob, it should be you. You have been championing that show since we started this thing. I don't think an episode goes by where we don't bring it up in some form, shape or another. Absolutely. If anybody
now that I've said it with such determination, such passion, I actually have to
It's out there now, so you have to do it. And
now.
guys, if you don't start seeing Superboy rewatch episodes on your feed within the next month, you need to just hammer Rob with emails and messages asking for that for that content. Put him under pressure to get it done. Great idea. You should do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we go, totally off topic, but it's kind of a big news item at the moment, and I think you'll have a lot to say about it. There's talk of a Buffy reboot right now, and I saw you were tweeting about it on the All Star Twitter account. And we've talked about it a few times, and I think there's a lot of connective tissue you can draw between Buffy and a lot of the stuff we like, and they blatantly reference Superman a lot on that show and other DC properties. So that there is a bit of connective tissue there, and Smallville absolutely would not exist without Buffy the Vampire Slayer. No. 100%. So I just wanted to get your take as a Buffy fan on this news, because there's kind of mixed feelings about it. I just if it isn't too off topic, what's your take on that whole thing?
Hopefully pessimistic, I would describe it as. I was, as you know, I was a mega fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer during its original run. It used to play on a new channel here back in the day, TV3. It came to Ireland in 1998, and for the first 3 seasons I was hooked. It was appointment TV for me. I love the characters. We did an episode recently on Superman 3 novelization. I have a box in the attic full of Buffy books. I loved it. The Watcher's Guide, all of it. And I kind of, season 4 didn't really do it for me, and I kind of drifted away from it over the following seasons until it finished in 2004. I would love to see it come back. I'd love to see it come back and execute it well. I would have grave concerns. Look, it's a tricky topic, right? Joss Whedon's a piece of shit. We can all agree on that, I presume. But can you make a Buffy the Vampire Slayer series without Joss Whedon's involvement? I don't know, to be honest with you. Yeah. I don't know. It was so much to do with him, and he was so involved, and it was the genesis was from him, and he really steered that ship throughout the seasons. I don't know if you can just bring in a new team of writers and go at that again 20 years later and have it be to the same caliber, the same standard that it was. Like, you made a point of the day that you think it was some of the it's aged very well, and it's some of the best TV that's ever been made. And I agree with that. Like, I will still go back and watch season 1 every few years and season 2. And I was really invested in the characters. Like, I can't even explain how much I loved that show back in the day. I cannot explain it. I was obsessed with it. I don't know. I've been burnt a lot, to be honest with you. You know, the first 2 seasons of Picard were awful television. I enjoyed the third, even though it was fan service. I know you didn't. A lot of this stuff is brought back. It's not as good. It's like, even things like Frasier has come back. It's not as good as the first. Why
are none of these things as good, do you think?
I just don't. I don't think you can just take the base ingredients and bring them back and have it. It's more than that with a show. It's lightning in a bottle, I think. You know, you can't just get Led Zeppelin back together and turn out an album and have it be as good as, you know, Physical Graffiti or something like that. You just can't. You know, it's a time and it's a place, I think. It's writers that were there at the time. It's the actors that were there at the time. It was the environment.
You said the magic word there.
What's that?
It's writers, man. They make
writers.
These things. They like, actors are beautiful people and they're lovely and they give life to it and they breathe life to it and they're such an important component, and that's fine. Writers create these things and they never bring them back for these legacy shows. And like, that's why they fail. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, Picard is a perfect example. Like, where was Ronald D. Moore? Where was so many incredible writers on Next Generation? Who's the guy with the pink hair who did Deep Space Nine? Where was he? Bring him back for Picard. They never bring back the writers. They always bring back the actors. And what everybody always says is, well, nobody knows the character better than the actor, so it must be good if they're back. But absolute nonsense. No, absolutely not. Patrick Stewart had terrible ideas for Picard as far back as the actual show itself and the movies. Like, he does not know better at all. He's an actor. Actors, you know, and by the way, I'm an actor, so I can say this, right? Watch this space. We'll talk about it in a couple of months. But, like, actors are full of ego and full of self-importance, and they have all these wild ideas about a character. They're not storytellers the way writers are, and they never bring back if you want to bring back these shows, bring back the writer. Now, you made it a very, very important point there about Joss Whedon, and I completely agree. And unfortunately, that's the state of things. You can't bring that man back, and he shouldn't set foot anywhere near a TV show ever again. But the difficult thing to navigate here is, like, unlike Star Trek or Superman or James Bond or any of these things that were a more collaborative enterprise, if you go back to those Buffy the Vampire Slayer DVDs or you speak to any of the writers, they all say the same thing. It's like, yeah, no, Joss Whedon is really the guy. Like, he created this. It's his voice. He goes back over every script and, you know, rewrites it to fit his vision and his dialogue style. I spoke to, and this, like, in real life, I've spoken to writers and artists who worked on the Buffy comics that were written in much more recent times. And even then, like, even less than 10 years ago, they were saying, oh, yeah, like, so the way it works is we have this big meeting in Joss Whedon's house where we plot it all out and we sign off on what it's going to be, and he has final say and everything. This is like recently, and these were people saying this to me in real life, not like clips on the internet or anything that could be produced or whatever. Like, it's such an intrinsic part of his style that I to your point, absolutely, I don't see how you can just, you know, bring in Chloe Zhao from the Eternals.
He's not the only problem. He's not the only problem. I mean, Nicholas Brendan is a tremendously troubled individual who has a lot of personal issues. I can't see how he could be brought back to work on the set. You have even just logistical issues, like a lot of the characters are vampires and they're older now.
I got into it on Twitter there. I was saying they'd have to do a pretty big retcon to explain why Spike and Angel look 20 years older.
Yeah.
And someone was like, well, no, they wouldn't have to retcon it because of the prophecy in the Angel show that said that a vampire, you know, can become human if they do this. And I was like, retcon literally means retroactive continuity. They would have to apply retroactive continuity for that to be the case. So it literally would be a retcon.
It literally would be a retcon. And look, those actors look great, but they don't look 25 years younger than they are now. I met James Marsters at a Comic-Con a few years ago. Lovely guy.
So did I.
Really, had a nice chat with him and stuff. And David, I've never met David. Bren is I'm never sure how to pronounce his surname, but he looks great. He's in one of Stacey's favorite shows, a SWAT show or something at the moment. But
Seal. What's it called? SEAL
Stacey
Team.
loves it. Yeah, she loves that. But yeah, look, I don't think. Patrick Stewart, you said it perfectly. Patrick Stewart had bad ideas in the TNG days. He had terrible ideas.
Everybody was convinced. Oh no, don't worry, guys. Patrick Stewart's
knows
got
what
us
he's
covered.
doing. Like, I'm sure Sarah Michelle Gellar is a smart cookie. She's a very successful woman. She's going to come back and she's going to be involved in this. I don't know what else she's written or what else she's kind of spearheaded before. I would just be very trepidatious about it.
I don't think she's so. It's not that she's involved creatively. It's just that she has sort of said, "Oh, well, no." It's that she put out this post saying, "Oh, don't worry, guys. Like Gail Berman came to me with this great new pitch, and Chloe Zhao's involved, and I really believe that this is going to work." And it's like that's like me saying I really believe it's going to. That means nothing. So,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Don't trust actors that their opinion matters in these things. They're not storytellers. I'm sorry. It sounds like, but I just there's
and
too many examples
I can't wait for all the posts about how Buffy has gone woke when it was woke 25 years ago.
Buffy was always woke. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to all that.
I just to end. On a note of positivity, like I agree. Like Buffy was very important to me as well. I kind of watched it initially when it was coming out. Like you, I think when I watched it initially, I did lose interest after the high school seasons, and I think the dourness of the later stuff kind of turned me off a little bit. Plus, my mum kind of caught wind to how adult it was and wouldn't allow me to watch it anymore. But I rediscovered it on Netflix about exactly 10 years ago, actually, and I was at a really low point. It was right before my career in TV actually started, and I discovered it on Netflix, and I actually went a little bit crazy about it for a little while. Like I was cosplaying a Spike, I was doing all this stuff, I was reading the comics, and yeah, I think it like objectively, I think it's the best superhero TV show ever. Like I mean, there are Superman and Batman ones that obviously mean more to me, but I think in terms of telling a superhero story from start to finish on television, I think Buffy is still the best one. And everyone's always gone on about how, oh well, Smallville was the blueprint. The whole idea of mixing a teen drama with superhero plots and doing the Peter Parker thing and the Batman thing and all
and
that
making
stuff,
it super horny.
having a person in a chair that's looking after all the computer hacking and the plots weaving in and out of each other and all that, all the stuff that Smallville did, like the freak of the week, all the stuff that people complain about, all that stuff happened with Buffy first, and Buffy set the template, and then Smallville took the ball and ran with it and made it into a Superman thing. And you would not have Smallville without
not only would you not, you probably wouldn't have had Buffy. The WB network or CW even.
You wouldn't have Supernatural, you wouldn't have all these amazing, kind of cult shows they had on. Charmed 100% wouldn't exist without Buffy. And just to your point about the later seasons, I think they work so much better. If you binge them on a streaming show now, on a streaming service, I think they work a lot better. I can totally understand, in the 90s, you're tuning in on a Saturday night and you're looking for a bit of entertainment and you want to feel good, wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
That the high school stuff is way more aspirational and colorful and fun. The later stuff is a lot darker and more dour.
Yeah, like when you get into episodes like don't get me wrong, I don't hate the later seasons. I just absolutely adore those first three. Like later seasons have great episodes.
I think season 5 and season 6 are some of the best episodes, some of the best seasons of television ever created.
If you ask me the names of like Lois and Clark or TNG episodes now, I really would struggle. Like I remember the big ones like Yesterday's Enterprise and stuff, but like if you ask me the names of episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer now, I could still rattle them off. Like even the later seasons, like episodes like Anne where she runs away from home, episodes obviously like The Body, episodes like Once More with Feeling. One escapes me now where they steal the voices, the guys, the creepy ass guys, Doug Jones and them steal. Oh my god! There's some really, really strong episodes there. I just found it at that time in my life really dour. I didn't really want to be dealing with people losing their parents and people, suffering with depression and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you know what? If anything,
I would go back, man, and give
I might
those
just do that.
episodes, like to tie it back into superheroes and stuff. The influence from superhero comics on Buffy is insane. Like Buffy herself is kind of a hybrid of like Spider-Man and Wonder Woman somehow.
Yeah.
Like you can definitely see kind of the Spider-Man one-liner quippiness in there, and the kind of the real high school problems, and like she lives with her mother and it's just the two of them, and she's always worried about her mother's safety and her mother's health, like exactly like Spider-Man. But then there's Wonder Woman stuff in there with the powers and the mythology and all that kind of stuff. And then Angel is just literally Batman. They make jokes about that all the time on the show. He has a grappling hook, he has an angel mobile. Spike is kind of the Joker initially, and then he becomes Wolverine later on. Xander is literally Jimmy Olsen. They make that joke loads of times.
When Spike and Buffy got romantically involved, that's when I was like, what are we doing here? That's when I kind of remember pulling away from it.
It got dodgy a little bit, but I think they turned it around so beautifully in the final season that I think, we're kind of spoiling the show here, but it's 20 years old, so it's fine. Spike's redemption in that show is one of my favorite character arcs in anything ever. They took a one-note character and they made him just one of the most three-dimensional. Like, find me something in any superhero like Marvel or DC thing that does anything as well as Spike's redemption in that show, because I submit to you that you won't find anything as good as that. I think it's absolutely incredible.
I watched an interview with James Marsters recently. If he was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, he was saying that element of the character, that he was this kind of one-note character and he turned into this fan favorite, was actually something that Joss held against him as the show went on.
Yeah.
That was a huge, which I found bananas. But talking about arcs in it, I loved that second season story about Angel turning evil, becoming Angelus, like him killing Jenny Calendar, Giles's partner. Like, that shocked me at the time. I couldn't, like, characters weren't killed in shows, like regular characters weren't killed in programs like that I watched at the time. And he comes back then and she has to send him to hell to close the hell mouth, and it's all coming back to me, man. Actually, I've changed everything. Bring it back. I want to.
That's child's play compared to what they do on the actual Angel spin-off, which is, you want to talk about dour shows for adults.
Yeah.
The Angel spin-off is one of the most adult superhero things ever. Like, some of the stuff they get into in that, and the kind of existential crisis they end up in the final season. The way they end that show is amazing and will frustrate and annoy people to no end, and I absolutely loved it. That final season of Angel, man, is so good. The two shows together, they did the shared universe first as well. It was incredible.
A shout out to my buddy Mark Hosford. I didn't have cable, I didn't have Sky when Angel came out, and it was only on Sky at the time. And I remember Mark used to record it on VHS and then bring the tapes into school and kind of pass them to me like they were contraband, get this back to me by 5 o'clock kind of thing on Monday. Did you ever watch the terrible 1992 Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie with Christy Swanson?
Alan, I saw that in Dublin's Great Lighthouse Cinema not 2 months ago.
You're joking me.
Yeah, I told you about it at the time.
Did you?
I saw it in the cinema. Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's a very interesting film to watch. It's a bit of fun. It's schlock. It's kind of shite.
I have it on DVD, I think, actually.
I think Christy Swanson is pretty good in it. And
Yeah.
I think she could have been Christy Swanson, who unfortunately has fallen down the same rabbit hole as Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo and all those guys. But she is actually quite good in it and would have been perfectly fine in the show. And the dearly departed Luke Perry is just, any opportunity to see him in anything is a treat for me. And I think, in spite of what Joss Whedon will tell you, Donald Sutherland is excellent in that film. The film's a bit shite.
Yeah.
Like, it's uninspired crap, and you can absolutely see why Joss Whedon would be so frustrated with it, because like there are sort of nuggets of Joss Whedon in there, but it's not a great film, but it is worth watching as kind of just to see where this all started
Well,
out.
I tell you, it's the last thing I'm going to say on it. If you want to watch a Buffy movie, now it's not a Buffy movie, obviously, but if you want to watch a movie that is just has that all over it, it's The Lost Boys. I think that the feel of The Lost Boys, the look of the vampires, that whole atmosphere is exactly what the atmosphere. The season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think, had an incredible atmosphere about it, and it's just almost lifted off of The Lost Boys, and put into Sunnydale. I think The Lost Boys is a fantastic vampire film, probably one of my favorites up there with Fright Night. And I just think, it's. I don't know if that inspired him in any way. I can't imagine that it didn't, because there's so much in it that you could literally take from it and put it into Sunnydale. But if you haven't checked out The Lost Boys, I'd highly recommend that you do.
And if you want to watch an Angel movie, any guesses?
Batman.
No, the Blade trilogy. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
but I first saw the Blade films around the same time that I was really getting into Buffy and Angel, and I was like, this is very, very similar. And it's not like one copied the other, because they came out like at exactly the same time. Like Blade was 1999, Angel also came out in 1999. So just a lot of similar ideas. Even the way they shoot the fighting is quite similar, and like in Buffy, when they stake the vampires, they turn into dust immediately. I think in Blade, I want to say, when the vampires die, they immediately go up in flames.
Yeah, they burst into flame and ash. Yeah,
similar stuff. A lot of leather jackets in both as well.
Yeah. It was a vibe.
Anyway, just wanted to kind of pick your brains. So that was a nice little side tangent there, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you know what? I really enjoyed this episode. I hope everybody enjoyed listening as well, and tune in for this one.
Absolutely, yeah. And please keep the letters coming, and we'll have way more exciting content in the weeks and months to come. Hopefully we're not having a crazy civil war in comment threads and message boards after this film comes out. Hopefully we can all just be kind.
Just be kind to each other. It's a movie. It's comic book stuff and it's films. I know it's important to people, but they're just movies. Just be decent to each other. That's all I'd say, because it really is a dumpster fire of crap there on X and all these things. I've pretty much left them now myself, to be honest with you. It's meant to be fun. It's it is what it is. Don't take it too seriously.
And speaking of dumpster fires of crap, please watch this space and stay tuned for my Superboy rewatch.
I did not know where that was going. Have you thought of a name for it yet?
I've thought of a couple of names, yes.
Okay, I'm excited to hear this.
I'm not going to tie myself down,
okay,
but I'm going to tell you off air a couple of the names I have in mind yet.
Cool. So if you have any thoughts on the interview with ILYA, you want to send in a voice note or a message, it's at allstarsuperpod@gmail.com is our email address. And we're also available if you want to follow us on Facebook or Instagram at allstarsuperfan, on X at allstarsuperpod, and we are on BLUESKY and all the other platforms as well, and YouTube.
Yeah, and if you want to help fund Santa Claus the series, let me know. If you want to produce it, I'm open to ideas. Just because ILYA SALKInd said no doesn't mean the next best producer isn't out there somewhere. So just please get in touch.
Perfect. Everybody, take care, stay safe, stay super. Until next time, bye bye.